Hello, everyone, and welcome to this broadcast. Last night, as you all know, the government passed legislation that will have the effect of sealing the records, the archive of the women and children who went through the mother and baby home system. To say that this decision has caused heartache, heartbreak, anger, bewilderment is, I think, an understatement. It is inconceivable that, given the state's history of allowing so much abuse of these women and children under the watchful eye of the state, and for that story to have gone untold for so long, that we last night in the year 2020 had a government that took that decision, and took the decision knowing full well that the survivors and their families had two requests. Number one, that the files would not be sealed for 30 years. And number two, that their records would not be sent to Tusla. And yet the government is going ahead to do both of those things. So we meet you with a very somber message, and with a great deal of anger in our hearts. I'm joined by Kathleen Funchion, TD for Carlow Kilkenny, Sinn Féin's lead spokesperson, and who valiantly fought good fight along with so many others last night in the Dáil and today in the Shannons, and with Joan McDermott. And Joan will introduce herself far more eloquently than I ever could. This will be a fairly short broadcast, but we wanted to touch base with people because we know that this decision made by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Greens, that government has really hurt people. So, Kathleen.
Thanks very much, Mary Lou, and thanks to everybody for joining us. We're absolutely devastated that this legislation has passed, and I just want to send a message of, I suppose, solidarity to survivors and their families. And please know that we are 100% with you. We stand with you, and we are totally in solidarity with you. We absolutely did our absolute best to, really display to the minister that this was a complete and utter disaster, that he should not be legislation. It was a big panic. There wasn't adequate time to scrutinise it. There was no consultation whatsoever with survivors, and that's crucial. And there wasn't even enough time really for us to be able to debate this properly. We very, very much heard the message coming from survivors and representative groups and families and friends that they do not want, and you do not want your records going to Tusla. Whatever people's opinions are of that organisation, they have failed people in the past regarding records and trying to access records, and there's a distrust there, and we understand that, and we support people in that. We also know that nobody wants the records sealed for 30 years. I mean, it's devastating to think how women and children were treated in this country, but the fact that the records are now sealed for 30, it's a further injustice, it's another injustice, and there's no point in people saying that they understand and saying that they have empathy and saying that they want to hear survivors when they take action like that. And Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens really should be ashamed of themselves, to say the least. They had, we all had an equal responsibility in that chamber last night to do the right thing by women and their children, and they failed miserably. But just for people to know that we are 100% behind you, and we will not be letting this go. Absolutely not. We'll be continuing this fight.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks for those words. Joan. Hello, Joan. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, a bit better than yesterday. Yesterday's news was absolutely shocking. Not what we expected whatsoever. But we will move on, and we will rethink of our next port of call where we go with this. And
Joan, tell just introduce yourself, Joan, for people who may not know you.
Well, my name is Joan McDermott, and in 1969 I became pregnant and was taken to Bellsborough Mother and Baby Home, where I gave birth to my son 6 months later. And at the age of 7 weeks, while breastfeeding, he was taken from me without my consent. And I never saw him again for 46 years. 2000, I spent most of my life in the UK. In 2000, I came back with a mission to search for my son and get his records and try to find him. Little did I know the bureaucracy that I had to battle through in trying to find those records. I was at every avenue I tried to explore, the door was shut in my face. 16 years later, I eventually got a result where I was very persistent with TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency. And this was after I'd written to the then Minister Fitzgerald to know where the records of Besborough would be held, and it was in TUSLA. So, being persistent, my records were found. Within a couple of days of they finding my records, I got a phone call from the social worker to say that they had now found my son's records. And then he had been searching for me for 9 years of the 16 that I was searching for him. Both are records in the same office. Now, when I say records, people assume that when even the records now that are going to be given to TUSLA are sealed away, some of those records are only A4 sheets of paper. And TUSLA did everything in their power, I'm giving my personal opinion, to stop me from accessing my records. When I found my son, they elongated the communication between us by not allowing us to see each other for 6 weeks after we knew that each other existed, thus making me further restrained from my son unnecessarily. And this is one of the reasons why I felt I had to take part and give my evidence in the Commission of Inquiry. I did that to be as open and transparent. And remember, I gave my evidence on oath, and I was truthful. And here we are yesterday, coming to the very end of it, where my records that I was truthful about what I witnessed, I gave evidence on it, are now going to be sealed away for 30 years. I wasn't not even allowed to have access to a transcript of my evidence. And I think this is very disingenuous to those survivors that had the courage to come forward, to relive and to tell our story of the Ireland that was, to ensure that it would never happen again to women. And this is how we were treated. I'm absolutely devastated. I'm devastated for all those women, that I've met along the way, that we've ended up like this. It's devastating and it's heartbreaking. But we will dust ourselves down and we will look at other avenues with regards to how we can access those records. I mean, last night I was inundated with phone calls, and one of the very pertinent questions came out was, if we have access to the records, do we have to go through that dreadful system of under the Freedom of Information Act, which goes to TUSLA, of which none of us want to do because of our experience with them in the past. So there's lots of questions that came out of this last night. Yeah.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
And
I'm still very emotional because I'm angry.
Yeah.
of course you're angry, Joan. You've every right to be angry. Kathleen?
Yeah, I suppose just to sum up for people, first of all, Joan, I know you and I totally admire you, and you're just one of the most amazing women, really. And there's so many fantastic, amazing, strong women. I honestly just, I suppose on a personal level, as a mother myself, I don't know how people came through it. I really don't. I have such admiration. I really, really do. And I just want to say to people that we are continuing this fight. We will not be giving up. We are going to look now to see what legislation that we can bring forward. We will put very severe pressure on government, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens to ensure that they support any legislation that we bring forward that can reverse this. You know, we heard a lot of talk, particularly this morning, from the Minister saying he felt maybe it hadn't been handled correctly. Well, if we bring forward legislation that will address it, that's the time for him to put his money where his mouth is. So just to say to people that, you know, we will obviously be staying in touch, and people want to get in contact with us. I know this has been a very difficult few days and over the last 2 weeks. So please, if you feel like reaching out, do. And we are 100% here, and we will absolutely not be going away on this. We'll be continuing with this until we get the right result, until women get the justice and the closure they deserve. And if people are allowed to tell their stories and get that out there and get their records and everything else, because this is so important. And you know, this state has a very, very bad history in how it has treated women and children, and it's really important that those stories are told. People describe it as a cold and a dark time in our history. We still need to ensure that we remember that, and we need to ensure that, in the very least, people have access to their own data, to their own information, to who they are, to their stories. So just to say to people, we'll be 100% behind you on this campaign until we get the right result.
Thanks, Kathleen. And thank you, Joan, in particular, as ever. You are wonderfully articulate and you tell your story with such incredible honesty and such frankness. And as I've said to you before, Joan, I feel a particular connection with you because your son is the same age as me.
Yes.
So we've talked about that before. And look, to so many of you, if you're watching here, I really want to join with Kathleen in sending our wishes to you and our warmth to you. I mean, it was heartbreaking to listen to that debate over the last number of days in the Dáil and in the Shannon, and tears were cried, salty tears, tears of sadness and tears of rage that this could happen again. So we're not going to just let this go. That's not how this story ends. And to every single woman, every single child who's affected by this decision, who came through those mother and baby homes and the county homes, this is not over. And all of us stand with you. You've got very powerful allies who will stand shoulder to shoulder with you as you complete this journey for truth. And we salute you. As ever, I take my hat off to you. I wish you well. And I thank you for joining us this evening. Gramila Magriv, thank you, Kathleen. And thank you above and especially to our wonderful Joan McDermott.
Thanks, Mary Lou. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thanks.